Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week is another video in the series of Tales from the Past, and this is video number 17. As with the previous videos, the stories all date from various different years and are in no particular order, and some of the stories may be slightly longer than others, and they may be about people, places, buildings, or just things that went on in the past in the Wallsend area. I hope you will enjoy it and find it interesting. In 1893, some major changes were made to Wallsend railway station. The station had originally opened in around 1839, and it was felt by the Wallsend board that it needed to be updated. They had decided to completely rebuild the station, but somehow they had managed to keep it open with apparently very little disruption for passengers using the line. J and W Simpson of Blythe and North Shields were the builders, and the architect was Mr. Bell of Newcastle, who had also been the architect of the recently built Carville station in 1891, which you may remember from a recent video. So no doubt there would be some similarities between the two stations. On the south side, or the up line, there was a general waiting room around 40 foot long with 3 large windows on each side. Next to this was a ladies' waiting room and then a gentleman's waiting room. The gentleman's waiting room was apparently furnished with a centre table and armchairs, which I must admit does sound very posh, and is not how I remember it from my childhood days spent catching trains to Newcastle. There was also a station master's office and a porter's room with a large fire and hot and cold water, and on both sides of the line for public use were water fountains with filtered water. On the north side, or down line, there was another large waiting room and a ladies' waiting room and public toilets. There was no mention of a fancy waiting room on this side with tables and armchairs, so maybe you only needed armchairs to sit and wait to go to the town. The station was lit throughout by gaslight. As with most railway stations, there were 2 clocks, one situated in the slope leading to the up platform and one near the down platform. There was a booking office, a parcel office and a ticket collector's office. And there were 3 entrances and exits to the station, one via the subway to the down platform, another by a short flight of steps, and the third, the one I remember the most, by a slight slope leading from the bottom end of Station Road up to the up platform, which terminated at the booking office. On this occasion, the outside of the building was not really discussed, but again, similar to Carville, some of the interior may have been quite grand, but the exterior was quite simple in its design. Again, sadly, this is something where the majority of photos of the old station are covered by copyright, so most of the photos you have seen on screen have been of the current metro station, which of course stands on the same site as the old railway station, and any other photos were of slides that I bought several years ago. I have many fond memories of this station, often travelling to Newcastle with my nana when I was a child, and also travelling to the coast, usually Whitley Bay with my nana as well. I am sure many of you have great memories of Wallsend Station, the trains and the trips that you went on, so do please share them with me in the comments below. In August of 1902, a trial run took place of one of the new trams that would be serving Wallsend. Travelling from Wallsend to North Shields, a group of men connected to the tramways were the first to try out the route. They aren't actually named. It was said the weather was fine that day and that the trial in every way was very successful, with the brakes being tested and said to be working fine. There would be a further trial taking place at a later date, and I have to assume that a trial in wet weather would be something they would want to do too. and the service from Wallsend to North Shields officially opened to the public in September of 1902. I have to admit to wondering what the people of Wallsend thought when they saw the first tram passing along the high street. I am sure that some would have been quite wary of them, probably saying they would never use them, and others would have been, no doubt, excited to take their first trip to North Shields. I am certain I have mentioned this before, but I have tried the trams at Beamish Museum, and I must admit I didn't find them very comfortable to ride on. But I think if I had been around in 1902, I would have been quite interested to try them out. And it would seem that some were more than happy with the idea of using the trams, though not quite in the way that they had been designed, as in 1903 a young boy of 16 years age, known as James from Willington Quay, was taken to court for hanging onto the back of one of the trams. Although he'd been seen by one of the inspectors at the back and side of the tram, James denied doing any such thing, and luckily for him it seems the magistrates believed him and the case was dismissed. It was, however, highlighted in the paper, no doubt to warn others of the dangers of hanging on the back or the sides of the trams, but I somehow doubt that James would have been the last person to do it despite the warning. And just in case I haven't mentioned this in any previous videos, the trams would run along Wallsend High Street and beyond until the spring of 1930, when they were replaced with trolleybuses, which I am sure many of you will remember much more than the earlier trams. At the time the service ended, a great worry was what was to happen to around 50 tram drivers and conductors who had been given notice on their jobs, as only a handful had been kept on to work on the buses, and some of the men had been in service up to 27 years. Sadly, I did not find any follow-up stories on these men, so I do hope they were able to find work elsewhere once the trams stopped running. In 1903, a lady by the name of Janet found herself in court for stealing 2 skirts. It seems that these skirts had been stolen from a house in West Street in Wallsend, and the lady who owned them, Mary, was actually the sister of Janet. Mary said the skirts were worth around £1. It seems that Janet was not a very good thief, as she not only admitted to taking one of the skirts, she had also tried to sell it, but being drunk at the time, she had left it with the person she had tried to sell it to without getting any money for it, and they had sold it instead. Janet was still found guilty and fined 10 shillings and costs, and if she was not able to pay this, then she would have been sent to prison for 7 days. And no one seemed to know what had happened to the second skirt, but it seems it was never found. A couple of further strange little stories from 1903. The first involves 4 boys from Wallsend who found themselves in court for throwing stones at a street lamp, which resulted in all the panes being broken. The boys, Hugh, Charles, William and Patrick, all said they had not done this. They did admit to throwing stones, but not at the lamp. The magistrates, unlike one of the earlier stories, clearly didn't believe them, and all 4 were charged 3 shillings, which they were to pay between them. And then another little odd story from 1903 is about a boy by the name of Thomas, who lived at Benton Way, and he had been seen by Sergeant Logan climbing up a lamppost in Benton Way and turning out the light. Of course, Thomas denied this. He said he was actually climbing up the post to turn it back on, as the wind had blown it out. Once again, the magistrates didn't believe the story, and Thomas was fined 6p. But it just goes to show that even back then, boys and sometimes girls still got up to mischief. And I can actually remember times from my childhood when the kids tried throwing stones at street lamps to break the glass. But it wasn't something that ever really happened, as the lamps in my day were much higher than the ones of 1903. To finish this week, I am popping back to Wallsend Station, as a little story caught my eye of the opening of the line in 1839. A group of gentlemen who were not named stepped onto the first train at Newcastle at 20 minutes to 12. It was said that the train moved off slowly for what it seems was a leisurely trip down the new line, and at 19 minutes past 12 the train arrived at Wallsend, and the article said that at the time there was an excellent view of the River Tyne from the train. At 25 minutes past 12, the train passed Wallsend Church. This, of course, would have been St. Peter's Church. And from there, it travelled on to the Willington Dean Viaduct, which, of course, most of us know better as the Seven Arches. The bridge was described at the time as being made of wood, which, of course, it was then, on stone abutments, and that it spanned some 1,050 feet. Apparently, as the train passed on the opposite side of the bridge heading into Howden, the band of the 83rd Infantry played as the train passed by, and by 20 minutes to 1 the train had reached Churton. I must admit this must have been something special to see. It was said that huge crowds had gathered where they could along the line to watch the train pass by, but I have to admit the place I would have liked to be would have been near to the Seven Arches to watch the first ever passenger train pass overhead, and I suspect it would have been a lot quieter than the metro trains that pass over it today. I do sometimes wish that I could go back in time to witness some of these amazing events take place, which is somewhat similar to what somebody said on one of the videos just recently. But I'm only happy to go back in time if I can come back really quickly, as I do like my 2024 creature comforts. I do hope that you have enjoyed this week's stories. I know a fair amount this week is train themed or transport themed, but I do still hope that you have found them all interesting. And I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.